Hello, bookish friends. It is almost already the middle of the month. Last week was very busy. We had 3 field trips in 1 week. And I have 4 books I've finished. Plus, I'm probably going to finish this one tonight. So I'm just going to go ahead and update on this one while I have the chance. And I think I will start with, I finished 2 ebooks. I finished Baggage Claim by Kathy Swanson. This one, Shatona had raved about Snow Angels, which is also by Kathy Swanson, last Christmas. And I've been wanting to read it, and then it went on sale, but also found out it's the second book in a series, and Baggage Claim is first, and that one was either free or on sale. So I went ahead and snagged those, and I decided to give Baggage Claim a try, which follows Ben Taylor. He is trying to find his birth family, and along the way some sketchy things are happening at work, and it turns out a bit suspenseful, and it involves insurance fraud. And then another character, he lives in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and so all the chapters with him are all outdoorsy, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, it was a good read. I'm still not sure what I want to rate it, because I have no complaints about it, so that doesn't drag it down. So it's at least a 4-star, probably a 4.5, maybe even a 5-star. We'll see. And then in homeschool, we read Homer Price. This is a few stories with Homer, obviously, as the main character. He lives in Centerburg, and he has an uncle who owns what we'd call a diner, but they call it a lunch room, because it only serves maybe breakfast, but lunch is their main meal they serve. And his uncle likes to have all of these gadgets and tools that try to do everything fast and for him, and sometimes it gets him into trouble, and sometimes it goes off really well. And I really liked it. Helps with problem solving, and one of my boys really liked it. The other one's like, ugh, there's so many machines. So worth reading. We did get the other book to read. And for Antober, we had to read a book set in a school, and I couldn't remember if I had read this edition of Harry Potter and the Azkaban. This is my favorite out of the 7 books. Of course, like I said, it's illustrated. So it was a fun way to read it this time. I think the illustrations did add to it. I'm not necessarily always going to want to read it with the illustrations, because they can be distracting, but it was a cozy read. I didn't finish it in October, but I still stuck with it and really enjoyed it. I was definitely able to see the differences between the book and the movie, because we watched the movies last year or earlier this year with our kids. The other ebook I finished was Random Acts of Shyness by Shatona Havig. I think this is my 3rd reading of it in a 1.5 years. Do any of you guys have comfort reads that you like to pull out and read when you're feeling really anxious? Well, this is one of those for me. Heath, the main male character, he's a missionary kid, and one of his ways to cope with awkward situations was to spout random animal facts. And then that continued when he's an adult, and it especially comes out when he's out on dates. And so it's like the mating habits of chimps, and did you know that all mammals empty their bladders within 20 to 40 seconds, no matter their size? Yeah, most women don't want to hear that on a first date. But hijinks ensued, and I just was feeling really anxious last week, because we had a big field trip that involved traveling, and my girls ended up staying with my mom, and so they wouldn't have to be in the car for so long and then have to be good. And then, yeah, but it all worked out. We got to ride with friends, and I was able to focus on the things in the museum, and my boys had a great time. But ahead of time, I was feeling anxious, so I pulled out Random Acts of Shyness by Shatona, and it helped me feel a little less anxious. And I'm going to go ahead and update on The Enchanted Castle by E. Nesbit. This is fantasy realism. So it's set in like our world in the early 1900s. I think it's copyright 1907, yes. And we have 2 brothers and a sister who have to stay at school over the summer. Actually, they have to stay at the sister's school over the summer because they can't go home with their siblings. And they end up in this place that they think is an enchanted garden with a princess. Turns out it's just the housekeeper's niece. But magic things do happen. And you never quite know how it's going to work out. And I've enjoyed it. It's felt weird and maybe a bit jarring sometimes. I do like that in it, the statues come alive at night when there's moonlight. And one of them, they call the Dinosaurus. And he is based off of the dinosaurs from the Crystal Palace in London. So they were made in the 1850s. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find it now, but he comes into this story in various ways. And last year, I read The Dinosaurs of Waterhouse Hawkins to my kids. And Waterhouse Hawkins is the artist who designed the dinosaurs at the Crystal Palace. And it talks about how huge these are. And just to give you an idea of how huge they are, Waterhouse had a dinner party to raise funds, and he held it inside one of the models of the dinosaurs that he was designing. It's really cool. If you Google it, you can see newspaper articles about it and everything. I can pop a picture of one of the newspaper illustrations. So it's been funny seeing him pop up. Also, we talked about the Dinosaurus being antediluvian, meaning pre-flood, not prehistoric, which is always fun to see because this is pre-Darwinism. So, or at least before Darwinism really caught on. And it was really cool for me to see that pop up in a children's book. So I might have my kids listen or read to this down the road. And that's all I've got for now. Still plugging away at The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And yeah, I'll have more books eventually. Things are really slowing down, but I'm probably going to read a lot over the Thanksgiving break. So, see you next time. I've got to keep this quick. My kids are watching a video real quick. I have 7 books to go over. Got my little cheat sheet. So first, I finally finished listening to The Inspector and Mrs. Jeffries. This is the first book in a series. It follows Mrs. Jeffries, who's a housekeeper for, I forget the inspector's name. Her husband, I think, worked on the police force. And so she can't help herself in trying to help the inspector solve mysteries. But the way she goes about it is a bit... made me uncomfortable. Because she'd do things like tell the butler, oh, my employer is Inspector... How's it bug me? I can't remember his name. as the inspector, he forgot this at home, he needs it, and would do that to get access to the crime scene. And so she would like see that he left his pocket watch on the table, and she'd slip it into her pocket so she'd have an excuse to go see where he was working. And there were times where she said like her conscience was pricking her, and after about the second or third time the author used that, I'm just like, ugh. So I did listen to the whole book. I think it's like a 3, maybe 4-star. I'm not going to continue the series. The mystery was good, and I liked the twists, but I did not like the Mrs. Jeffries methods. And the other one I finished as an ebook was The Matchmakers of Holly's Circle by Shatona Havig. She gave away the ebook recently, and I snatched it up. I was trying to be good and finish some of the books on my TBR. And I sat down and I read it in a little more than a day. It was really good. Shatona takes the miscommunication trope and takes it next level. Like 10 years, these people are obviously in love with each other, but there's miscommunication that makes it so the guy thinks he can't ask the girl out. And there's an old guy who's like, we'll play poker. If you lose, I'll listen to you talk about Jesus for an hour. If I win, you two have to go on a date. And it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. Oh, and for Die November, if you watched my video on that, we read The Great Bone Hunt by Margaret Cooper. This is set Thomas Jefferson's time, and these people keep finding these bones, and they want to know what it is. There's a theory that it's a giant or a boar or a hippopotamus, and they come across this guy who's a naturalist, and he sends out word, and they find a place to dig up more bones. It's great fun. It's not actually a dinosaur, but it was bones and fossils, and great fun. And I did finish Mrs. Palafax and The Lion Killer. I drew this for in a series. This is number 10. No, 12. I think it's number 12. There's 2 more after this. And I can't say too much about this one because it continues the previous book. I can tell you that Mrs. Palafax goes to a country in Africa, Ubangiba, because the king there is friends with a friend of hers, and he's like, I need help, please come, and they go. This is not one of my favorite Mrs. Palafax books. I didn't really like the Lion Killer aspect of it, but I did like Mrs. Palafax and some of the people she meets. And if you have not tried the Mrs. Palafax series, I highly recommend it. It is such fun. And we finished up some more books in homeschool, including Dino Dave's Adventures and Apologetics, book 1. He just has 12 chapters, takes an aspect of archaeology, or paleontology, and dinosaurs and fossils, and connects them to the Bible and aspects of God and how they all correspond, and it was great fun. And my kids are 3 through 10, and definitely the 5 through 10-year-old were grasping at least most of the concepts. And we also finished our missionary story for the month, Jim Elliot. He is also, if you watched my previous wrap-up video, he was martyred with Nate Saint, with the Stone Age tribe in Ecuador in the 1950s. And it was just interesting to get another aspect, another perspective on that story and how God was able to use that horrible tragedy to bring a whole tribe of people to Christ, or at least a good portion of the tribe. And finally, I have City of Serpents, Secrets of Wormdale. This is book 4. There's one more book. It just came out last week, I believe. I drew this for 5-star prediction. Don't know if I'd quite give it 5 stars. I mean, I finished it and I'm immediately like, oh, I wish I had book 5 so I could finish the series. Not sure how much I can say about this because it is the 4th book in a series, except to say Edith, our main character, she writes mysteries, and her family is the caretakers of dragons in the Yorkshire Dales, and she ends up in London trying to find an antidote to dragon venom. We are missing one of my favorite characters, Simon. Can't say why without giving away book 3. And we do get some new characters who I enjoyed, and yeah, I'm looking forward to book 5. Hope that wasn't too fast. That means I've checked off 3 books on my TBR. Still plugging away at The Cost of Discipleship by Bonhoeffer. Just sipping that book a little bit every day. I probably won't finish it this month, but yeah. Then I'm currently reading one of the books on my TBR, and I have 2 others to read, and I still want to read The Camp to Baghdad by Agatha Christie. And we're not doing school next week, and we're traveling to my in-laws, so I might get a whole bunch of reading done before the end of the year, or end of the month. So I'll be back with another update. Okay, this week's video is going to be late. We went and saw my in-laws for Thanksgiving, and we got back on Sunday, and within 2 hours, one of my kids had a fever, and now 2 of my kids have a fever. So I spent a lot of the day cuddling sick kids. One of them is napping right now, though, so I'm gonna finish up November's books. And hopefully I didn't miss one. I did Wrong About Mr. Right by Shatona Havig. I drew this one for favorite author backlist. This one has 2 people. There goes my furnace. So this book has Ronnie, who is a relatively new Christian, and she's trying to break some of her old habits, and she gets stuck in the airport and is not kind to people, and so the airport worker, it's a small airport, calls one of the local guys. She's like, please bring us food and get this woman out of here. So she ends up staying in the mother-in-law suite above his garage, and they get to know each other over a few days. And yeah, it has a couple older people as the main characters. It was a lot of fun. Glad to have read another Shatona book. Then I read The Lines Between Us. Drew this one for nonfiction. I have read a couple of Amy Lynn Green books. I'm not sure if there's one more of hers or not that I haven't read. And this is World War II toward the end. And Gordon Hooper is the main character. He's a conscientious objector to the war. And so he ends up working for the Forest Service, putting out wildfires in Oregon during World War II, and his best friend is injured in a fire, and so he writes the sister who works in the Women's Army Corps, Dory. I didn't like Dory, but I think that was the point. She was a bit abrasive. She made up stories all the time, and she lies about her identity in order to be at the camp where the forest people live, and I stuck with the book, and I'm glad I did. Dory does show some growth toward the end, and I liked Gordon. So yeah, a different take on World War II. And I read the Thanksgiving book for the Scottish Bakehouse Mysteries. There's 3 women in their 50s, I think, who decide to open up a bakehouse in the Upper Peninsula in this Scottish-themed town. And Molly, she lives above the bakery. Her daughter comes to stay with her over Thanksgiving because bats have infested the veterinary clinic where she works, and there's some pranks going on, and someone dies, and there's a mystery, and yeah, I liked this one. Gonna continue the series. Oh, I also do this one for mystery. And finally, I read the December chapter of Life Giving Home by Sarah and Sally Clarkson. This chapter was written by Sarah, the daughter, and it just talks about ways to celebrate Advent and to anticipate celebrating the birth of Christ and how her family does it. And one of the things she talks about is the women in her family host a Christmas tea where they have friends over and have some questions like, what has been the best gift of the past year? What are you most looking forward to this Christmas? What do you hope the next year holds? What is hard in your life right now? And as a favor, Sally sends home a tiny ornament with all the people, and she selects them over the year. She's bought carved angels back from Poland, tiny teacups from a conference, even crystal drops from Cracker Barrel. And she always ends the tea with an explanation of why she chose them and what she hopes will follow her guests into the next year. And the ornament everyone remembers best? The tiny teacup. Drink the cup God has given you, said Mom, and accept it as grace. I love that. Makes me want to find a tiny teacup ornament. And I do have one of my friends over for Christmas tea every year, and we exchange gifts and talk about books, and it's always a lovely time. Sometimes we watch a movie too, but anyway, I've got my stack of other books that I have finished this month. I read a lot. I've some new ones, a couple rereads, some things I read to my kids. It was a good month. Not a lot of 5 stars, but still good. Yeah. Let me know what you read in November, what was your favorite book, and what you plan on reading in December. I will be back with another video. I might try to do some extra videos this month since we're not doing much school, but it depends on how much sickness we have. Hopefully not the flu. I really don't want vomiting during opening presents again this year. So anyway, happy reading and see you next time.